I think it's working. Awesome. Hello, everybody. This is my first Facebook Live video I've ever done, and certainly the first one for you guys, the members of my Art of Healthy, Authentic Relationships group. And I just wanted to pop in here today, just because the group is getting going and it's growing, and there's some folks of you in the group that are in relationships where you're struggling and you're working on it, but you're feeling kind of stuck. And I was thinking about things that I could do to offer resources and support and hope for you feelings, and was in a lot of pain and was feeling pretty hopeless. So it's an amazing story, and I'm hoping that you guys will get something out of that. And I'm going to be doing that as we go, probably once a week, either interviewing people who have been able to successfully transform their relationship, or just sharing some tips live with you all, and maybe doing some Q&As. So be sure to give me your feedback in the group and let me know what you think and what would be helpful for you, and I will see what I can do. So with that, I'm going to bring in my former client, Dr. Rajiv Party. We'll see if this works here. Okay, it looks like you're on. Welcome.
Yeah, hi, Monica.
Hi. Thanks for joining us and taking the time today to share a little bit about your story. I'm so glad to have you.
I'm very excited to be here.
Good. So what I thought I would just start with, and this is just real informal. I just wanted to kind of get, if you can share with people, I mean, I know your story already, but if you can share with people in the group a little bit about what happened for you when your relationship was on the brink. You've been married for how long now?
Close to 30.
Close to 30 years. Okay, so tell us a little bit about what happened in your relationship when you were on the brink.
You know what, 2-3 years ago, my wife suddenly told me she doesn't love me. And she has not loved me for 2 years. And hearing those words was very painful. Very painful. And I could not understand why she's saying that. But looking back, I realized our marriage was on a downhill. It was going to break. Mm-hmm. And then we were not able to reconcile, and we thought of going into a friendly divorce. And she realized that I was a changed person, and from lawyer's office we reconciled, and it was only a 6-week reconciliation for us to complete 30 years. It was in December and anniversary is in February. But after the 6-8 weeks were over, we never looked back. I'm happy to say that we are thriving in our marriage, the best year we had in 30 years of marriage, and we are thriving individually. Mm-hmm. It's been a wonderful, like we are having perpetual honeymoon.
Yeah, I mean, that's just amazing. But I think what you're saying is so true, is that when people are happy individually, let me switch this around. Sorry, I want to make it so that you're bigger and I'm smaller. There we go. So that people can really see you. That when you are happy as an individual, that will feed the relationship, and vice versa. When the relationship is happy, that feeds you as an individual, but it can't just be the relationship feeding the individual, right? You have to really be happy as an individual in order to nurture the relationship.
Yeah, I believe that, you have to love yourself and transform yourself before you can love others.
So tell us about how you did that, because your story is really quite amazing. So during that period of time after she told you, I don't love you anymore, you were really devastated, right? And
I was devastated. I was actually suffering from a medical syndrome. One can Google it, heartbreak syndrome. I was anxious, or like from love trauma. I had PTSD symptoms like hypervigilance, short-tempered, enraged, and could not figure out what's going on. Mm-hmm. And then I worked on myself, and I realized my part in how the marriage went down. Like my marriage that time was a very hierarchical, vertical marriage. A husband at the top, then wife, and then children. Mm-hmm. So one thing I would like to point out to your audience is, when me and my wife reconciled, I took her out for a dinner before I moved back in. And I asked her, what does she want? And she said she wants respect, care, and love. And that order is also very important. She didn't ask just for love. She asked for respect to be acknowledged, to be taken care of, to be what she thinks has value,
Mm-hmm.
and then to be cherished, to be taken care of. Like, I want to do it from my heart, not just for formality.
Mm-hmm.
And then the love blossoms on its own.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, recently I read by Helen Fisher a book where she talks about love is not just an emotion, it's a natural human drive. We all want to be in a relationship, we all want to be in love.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it's also a verb, right? It's something you have to do. But like you
It's
say,
something you have to do, yeah.
sometimes you have to put the actions in and then the feelings come as well, right? It's not always just the feeling that carries you, but you also don't want it to be purely mechanical.
Yeah, and to answer your question further, how did I do it? I worked on myself at 4 levels: physical, mental, heart or social, and spiritual.
Mm-hmm.
Physical, I lost 15 pounds, went to the gym, I took charge of my health. And that really made my wife subconsciously feel secure that he's taking care of his health. He'll be there for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then I worked on my stress. But stress in marriage was what was causing our marriage to go down. To manage stress healthy ways, yoga, meditation, going to silent retreats. And then social. And social is very important, to having like-minded friends, hanging out with your friends and having a good time. I was reading the other day, Denmark has the highest rate of people who are happy. And the reason is that they're very social. They get together on weekends, on holidays, as a group and have fun. And the last I mentioned was spiritual. And spiritual is finding a meaning in your life, a purpose, your calling. And it doesn't have to be spiritual, like here also I use the word vertical, where God, angels, and ascended master, but it could be horizontal spirituality, or it could be both. You're working for a cause higher than your own self, like preventing child abuse, preventing human trafficking, or environment, or something like that. When she saw that I was a new person, I was actually Raj 2.0, it changed her dynamics. Like, we were actually going to learn samba dancing. Like in samba dancing, if one partner moves left or right, the other partner follows.
Mm-hmm. So you changed the dance in a way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then she had to change along. So when you made those changes, was that from the place of that you already thought the relationship was over and you were trying to heal yourself from the breakup? Or were you doing those changes at the time thinking that you were still fighting for the relationship?
Originally, changes started with that relationship is over.
Mm.
But then I saw self-responsibility and self-love and self-care.
Mm.
From there, I realized what my part is. And then we reconciled, and it's never looked back. Actually, on our anniversary, after 6 to 8 weeks, we went to the temple and made a bonfire and together burned the divorce papers.
Mm. So that never ever got signed. You came close.
It never got signed.
Yeah. Yeah. And how long did that whole process take then, from the time that you decided that it was over and you started kind of healing yourself, taking care of yourself, going to the gym, initially making those transformations to heal yourself as an individual without any hope of reconciliation, until the time that you thought, hey, you know what, maybe we have a chance. How long was that time period?
Whole process, I would say, took from my transformation to like our anniversary, when we really thought that we have a chance and not to mess it up. We can really have a great life together. But I would say 6 months.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's not an overnight fix,
No. Mm-mm. So tell us a little bit about that turning point where you were like recognizing your part in things. Do you remember having that shift, and what made you look inward? Because at the time you had reasons to feel, angry at your wife, or feeling transgressed upon, or feeling, like, you were the hurt one. And it's really easy to do, right? When we feel hurt, or when we feel like the other person has disregarded us, or the other person hasn't given us a fair chance, or the other person has treated us badly, we could, it's easy to justify focusing on them. How did you get to the point of looking inside and saying, here's the part that I played.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I realized the way out of heartbreak is to go within, not looking for outside. Originally, I was in a state of what people call pity party, pity me, and victim mentality. My mindset was all a victim mentality. But then I realized this is not the way I want to live my life. And I went for growth mindset. How can I grow from this, grow from what the crisis was?
Yeah.
I hired you as a coach, and you helped me a lot. And I read some books and went for some workshops. And so I had a lot of support system in place.
Yeah.
And that when I would be falling off the horse, my support would help me get back on the saddle.
Yeah.
It's not an easy process.
Right. What's interesting, though, and I think is something I would want to emphasize for the sake of the group here, is that it was the changes that you made for you. You made them not with the original intention of trying to save the relationship. You weren't making the changes for her. You weren't making the changes to prove anything. You were making the changes because you felt like you needed to make those changes to be a healthy person on the inside first, without even thinking about, I mean, you knew it would have a positive impact on your well-being, but the point is that it was really an inside job for you without thinking about what your wife was going to think or trying to spin her perceptions of you. It really was an inside-out transformation first. And then that sort of catalyzed a shift in your interactions with her, where she started to take notice of your change of energy, your strength, and that changed, how she saw you. And then that provided a glimmer of hope. And I see this all the time. I see this as it's so important, because when things are on the brink, a lot of times people want to make changes for the other person or for the sake of just saving the relationship, because it's too painful to imagine the separation. And so and that's a good motivation. Certainly that's a reasonable and perfectly fine motivation to want to make those changes. But if that's the only reason, then what happens is once you get back to status quo, it's easy to slip back into old patterns because the changes weren't completely deep enough.
They won't last
so deep in order for the foundation to be there and to sustain the changes that you make in the relationship. And I think that's what's so powerful about your story, is that you had really done a lot of inner work. So when you say you have to look inside, what did you find and how did you find it? And what would you want to recommend to other people who are feeling really hopeless right now? They're feeling really disconnected. They're feeling like they're maybe their partner has already decided they've got one foot out the door. What would you say to them, and how could they find that within themselves?
First of all, it's self-responsibility. How I contribute to it. I call the volume. How I contributed. And then the other thing is, you do it for your own self. I was reading the other day the book by John Gray, Mars and Venus, Starting Over. And he says, if you come from a place of neediness, it won't work. Like in my case, we have 3 children. I had become the 4th child. I realized that she had to nurture me. She had to take care of me. Like, it was all about me. When I shifted from me to you, that was a big shift. I became a man for her. Again, gave up my neediness. And I was saying John Gray, he said, you reconcile or you find a new relationship when you really don't need somebody.
That's the irony.
You're so strong in your own self.
Yeah. That's the irony of the whole situation. That is really powerful. And it's not that you can't have needs as a man, but it's like what you're saying is that you would be more in service to her and being able to hold space for her as well. And so that she could lean into that.
Exactly, Monica. You got it right.
Yeah.
And I started taking care of her, genuinely loving and cherishing her. Like we developed a deep friendship, and I found out in relationships for partners, any kind of partners, a deep friendship, a shared meaning is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you not have that before?
No, we were living a life like a regular couple, but there was not that deep connection, soul to soul connection, which we have now. No, we still have arguments, we still have fights, which is normal in any relationship. But how you repair a fight, and one of the main things is when we have a fight, it always used to be about I feel or you are good for nothing, you never do it right, you are always angry or something like that. From that mentality, from you blaming you, I went to I need you to help me with this project. So as long as I stayed in I for the negative things, it was wonderful. That is called having a complaint. But when you go to you are good for nothing, you're always doing that, you're careless, you're never helping me.
Yes.
That becomes a criticism. And nobody likes to be criticized.
Right. It just puts people's defenses up, right?
Exactly.
And you're less likely to get what you're wanting. That's a really important distinction, that complaint versus criticism, that you can complain. A complaint is like, oh, I wish you had unloaded the dishwasher because now I have to do it before I go to work and I'm going to be late or whatever. That's a complaint. A criticism would be, you never unload the dishwasher. What were you thinking? Why can't you ever see what needs to be done around here, kind of thing? Because then you're just globalizing, right, and making it about
exactly.
that. But in order to give a complaint, you have to be more vulnerable, because you have to say, oh, I'm disappointed, or you have to share something. You're not talking about them to them. You're talking about you to them. Then you're really communicating. You're really sharing. But that component of self-responsibility, I wanted to follow up on that because I think that's really important. But a lot of questions that I get are, so when I'm talking to somebody, and I've struggled with this myself in my own relationship, where it's like, but I don't want to take too much responsibility. I'm already doing the lion's share of the emotional labor, or I'm already the one that's always self-reflecting and trying to improve myself, while my partner, on the other hand, isn't even taking the time to talk about this stuff. They're not reading any books about it. They're not making an effort. They think it's all my fault. They're not, what do you say to people like that, where it's like this distinction between taking self-responsibility and taking all of the responsibility?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, everything in life is a balance, like limited quantity, or, like taking responsibility, but not taking the whole responsibility. That is self-defeating. Then we develop what is known as codependent relationships. From friendship, it's become codependency, and that's not healthy for a relationship.
Right. So it's really that line. It's like taking full responsibility for what's on this side of the line, what's on my side of the street. That's what you take 100% responsibility for, even if that's only 5% of the problems of the dynamic. But you're not going to take full responsibility for the whole relationship and for the whole dynamic and for their stuff. But you're going to say, what can I do differently? How can I say things differently? How can I think about things differently? How can I take care of myself so that I bring my A game to every situation? All of those things. What can I change doesn't mean that you're absolving the other person of their responsibility. But
no.
What you find is that when you just focus on your side of the street, it's a lot of power. It's a lot more power than people think they have. Sometimes that's not the sexy answer, because they think, well, that's not a fun, sexy answer. Like, that's boring. Like, I've already been doing that or whatever. But really, when you really take it to the full, potential that you can take that to, of 100% accountability for everything that you say and do, and how you feel and how you treat yourself and everyone around you, and the beliefs that you hold, or the stories that you tell yourself, or the interpretations that you make, or the meaning that you give things, when you do that, you end up actually changing the other person, not because you were focusing on them, but they end up changing because you've modeled something that they either are inspired by and now they want to join you, or they just fall in love with you because they see you taking care of you, and that's attractive. It's attractive to see somebody who is, a stand-up person, right?
Exactly. I became Raj 2.0. One thing I do want to emphasize, seeking professional help was very big catalyst in my marriage, saving my marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
well, you're a professional.
I worked with you for 6 months. Like coach can help you see the big picture, can see the potential
Yeah.
and support you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. It's true. I've had coaching myself, and you don't always see your own blind spots. And people that are close to you, like family and friends, are almost too close to the situation. So have you found that they like sometimes have an agenda that will get in the way of what actually you're trying to do? And they try to be helpful, but it's actually not very helpful sometimes.
They're not helpful because they're not neutral. All my relatives and her relatives and friends were biased. They were either on her side or on my side.
Yeah.
The coach is neutral.
Yep. Yep.
That really helped Monica.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm glad.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing your story. I just want to see if you have any other advice for folks in this group, any words of encouragement for people that are in the place that you were about a year ago, maybe two.
Yeah. I would like to emphasize one thing: forgiveness. Forgiveness is a very big part of healing any relationship. And forgiveness is for your own self. When you give up the hope of a different past, but you're not condoning the other person's actions. What they did was wrong, remains wrong, but you still forgive them for your own sake.
And how did you do that? I'm just curious if you could share that with people. How do you?
You can do is ritual. It's not a one-time process.
Right.
It is. You can ritualize it. Like I wrote a letter to her, and I did not give it to her. I burnt it, journaling, or you practice mudita. Mudita is a Sanskrit word, actually a Buddhist term. I found it in Google. It was fully described there, which means I am happy because you are happy. You become other-centered than just work self-centered.
Yeah.
Self-care is very different from self-centeredness. Like that's the key distinction. I'm talking about taking care of yourself, but don't become egoistic, self-centered.
Absolutely. Perfect.
And one last thing I would say, Monica.
Yes.
Small things count. Sending a flower without any reason, or going to the grocery and bringing her favorite food without her asking. That makes a big difference.
It's really true. We tend to think that it's the big events, the anniversaries and the birthdays and all the trips, but it's really the day-to-day actions, the small actions that add up and create that fabric of trust and love in a relationship. I also like what you said about how forgiveness is not an event. It's not just a decision that we make. It's a process, right? It's a process, and sometimes it's easier than others. But if you set your intention to finding it, eventually you get there. And it is strengthening to you in the end, because it takes you out of, it's saying that they no longer have the power to take away your happiness, no matter what they've done. Like you said, you can't change the past.
Yeah. You can't rewrite the past. It's so true.
Yeah.
So in the end, I would say my mantra, which is say, forgive, love, and heal. And by healing, any relationship can be healed. But forgiveness comes first, then love comes, and then the healing takes place.
Yeah. That's perfect. I love it. Thank you. I'm going to just check and see if there's anybody on the live that has any questions. I've never done this, and I wonder if they're on, if they actually are able to post a question for you.
Sure.
And if not, that's okay, because if people watch it after, like right now we're live, but once we're done here, this will be on the thread, or it will be in the group. Anytime when somebody wants to watch a video, you can just post your questions or comments below. And Rajiv, you're in the group, so you'll see. And can
I'll answer them.
Questions yourself. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I don't see anybody. I hope I'm not doing this wrong. I don't think I see anybody with questions at this time. So we will close for now. Thanks again for joining us.
And thank you to you, Monica.
I will interview you again as an expert in the next few weeks here too. So
okay.
I look forward to that. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye now.